Welcome everyone to today's Apprenticeship Week talk. As you probably know, it's a National Apprenticeship Week and it's a long week celebration, celebrating apprenticeships, and this year the theme is Skills for Life. Today we are joined by Tokamak Energy with Paul, who'll be talking about his experience going from apprenticeship, actually where it would lead to in the future. So please remember, at the end we'll have questions and answers. So please put them in the chat, and then we'll get back to you at the end asking Paul these questions. I hand straight over to you, Paul.
Cheers, James. Morning, guys. I'm Paul Timmis. I'm 36 years old. I live in Oxford, not a native of Oxford, as some people may have picked up on my funny voice. Work for Tokamak Energy, currently as a digital design coordinator in a department known as Site Infrastructure Projects. And the business conducts nuclear fusion energy research down in South Oxfordshire on a big industrial estate. My job and my department, I'll explain a little bit more later on as I work my way through my different places of employment. To achieve my apprenticeship, I attended two different colleges in the area. One was to achieve a City and Guilds in Performing Engineering Operations Level 2, and another one was an MVQ in Mechanical Manufacturing Engineering, also at Level 2. I was given an opportunity to come and help the next generation, and I thought that would be a nice thing to do. So I've come here today to hopefully give you a little bit more guidance than what I was given when I was a high school student. So growing up, when I was probably even younger than some of you guys now, I always wanted to be a police officer. I couldn't see beyond anything other than being a police officer. There was no plan. There was no really looking into it. I thought you can just finish school and go and be a police officer. And no one told me that wasn't the case either. So that was the belief, and that was inspired by these guys that you can see on the screen. So none of you would have been to Sunhill Police Station. Hopefully none of you have been to any police station. But Sunhill is a fictional police station on a long-standing series called The Bill, which ran between 1983 and 2010. I think I stopped watching it once I realised I couldn't be a police officer after leaving school. But so yeah, so these were the good guys, always out catching the bad guys, and I fancied a little bit of that. So that was my only real game, really. I attended Maricourt Catholic High School, which is in Liverpool. I don't think we've got anyone from Merseyside tuning in today. I didn't enjoy school at all, really. I didn't really try, which I massively regret. But I got by. I think for someone who didn't try, and looking at the GCSEs I came out with, I do often wonder what I would have achieved if I tried. So yeah, that's one of my biggest regrets is not trying, not thinking long term, not thinking beyond my school days, and not trying as some of my regrets. But as you'll see as this goes on, it's not the end of the world if you don't get what you hope to have achieved. So I left school with those GCSEs. I had no immediate plan. So initially I thought I'll just get a job, and if I've got some money coming in, that would be considered a short-term success for someone who didn't have a plan. And I got some temporary work working in some local production facilities. Nothing to shout about, really, just some agency work in some production lines. Sorry, I didn't move on to the next tab there, did I? So yeah, there's my GCSEs. I got C's in English, maths, and all of the sciences, geography, art, and IT. Unfortunately, I didn't get a language GCSE because I didn't start Maricourt Catholic High School until halfway through year 9, and my former school was teaching me German, and they didn't do German in this school I moved to, so it was almost impossible for me to pick up one of their languages without disrupting the whole class. So it was agreed that we would just skip a language, unfortunately. My career in STEM started purely by accident. Like I said, I'm not a native of Oxford. My dad was already living down here. I came down to Oxford for 2 weeks and went back 6 months later to get the rest of my things. I really enjoyed the area I was living in. Nice countryside, lots of rivers and lakes to go fishing in, which is one of my favourite things to do. One day I was in the pub, as you can see on the left hand side. That's one of my local pubs, and playing pool with my friends. And one of the guys at the bar approached me. He heard my accent and came over and asked if I was related to my dad, who he told me he knew. It turns out this guy was the godfather of my youngest brother. He asked me what I was doing for work. Currently, I wasn't working at all, and he invited me down to his workshop, which is his business, called the Corona Engineering, to do some work for him. Initially, that work was driving a digger, which was a skill that I had from my sort of labouring experience. But he had some work he wanted doing in the car park and some extra drainage, etc. So I went down and done that for 2 weeks. Once that had finished, he asked me to come inside the workshop and start doing some trivial tasks, taking stock, preparing materials for the engineers to use, taking the waste steels and alloys to the recycling centre, and then insisting with inspection and shipping of the components to our customers. So I'd done that for a couple of months before being a little bit inquisitive. And this machine you can see on the screen now is a lathe. I've been told by colleagues that lathes are really popular on TikTok at the moment. I'm not a TikToker, so I've not seen that footage, but apparently lots of interesting things are being made on TikTok. So this machine sat in the corner of our workshop. It was the oldest machine. No one was using it. I asked what it was and if I could have a go. And they found some trivial things for me to do on it. And as the months went on, I started to request more and more complex components, and some examples of those components are shown in those 3 images. These components were going into various industries, such as medical sectors, autosport. We have a lot of autosport industry in Oxfordshire. It's known as, I think, between Oxfordshire, Northamptonshire, and down to even as Surrey, I think it's known as Motorsport Valley. The amount of racing teams and racing engineers in the area is a high volume. Equally with science as well. Some components were going into cryogenics, which is the cooling using liquid nitrogen to -200 Celsius. So I never got to see where the components went. I just knew what the industry of the client was. So unfortunately, I can never get to envisage where my parts were in that particular race car. But as time goes on, I did get a better clue, and I'll come to that later on. After 5 years, I left that company. So I had my qualifications, I had some experience. Looking back, I thought I was really experienced, but now at 36 years old, I realised I knew very little. But I moved on to another opportunity. I moved on to Oxford Engineering. This was the same as the business I just left, just 5 times bigger. Lots of lathes, lots of mills on a much larger industrial scale. I was there for 6 months maybe, and then moved to another company called Metalweb, who had some state-of-the-art water jet cutting machines, which I thought were really interesting. This uses, it's a bit like a jet washer that you may find at home in the shed. A jet of water, high velocity, filled with grit, blasts its way through a sheet of alloy into a desired profile. Unfortunately, the job description didn't really reflect what I was doing. I ended up just being a part of a process, really, loading the material onto the machine and then pressing the button and then unloading it and going again. So my brain desired doing a little bit more than that. So I kept on looking for more interesting experiences. And that's where I would say I had my first extremely interesting job. It says race, it's not racing cars. It is an acronym, which is not really relevant, but it was based at the Culham Centre for Fusion Energy, which I believe is overseen by the United Kingdom Atomic Energy Authority. Now, this was like similar to the company I'm working for now, Tokamak Energy. This was a joint European venture to research fusion energy, and they have a device called a Tokamak, same as us, Tokamak Energy, and this device would be used to create a plasma, but it would also create radiation. So once you built the machine, it would then be operated and become radioactive. So to make any amendments, you wouldn't really want to send any humans in there exposed to high levels of radiation. So they created a remote handling system, and this bizarre looking robot, for lack of a better word, that you can see, it was called Mascot. Now, if you could imagine those two arms hanging down over the front across your shoulders, it looks like it would be sort of worn on your shoulders, and it'd be a sort of an extension of you. This what you can see sat inside the nuclear reactor during a lockdown period where we'd go into some maintenance. I would be 200 meters away, sat underneath another version with this robot strapped to my arms and a lot of screens on the TV. You can see coming off the arms here, you've got some cameras here. They were wrist cameras. Above on the head, this was head cam, and those various cameras dotted around the vessel as well to give me a good understanding of what it was I was doing. Inside the hands here, the grips, you can see there's some tools. This tool here is an Allen key. So I'd be inside, virtually inside the reactor, doing some maintenance of the reactor, making some upgrades to diagnostics equipment. And when we wasn't doing that, we was maintaining the robot and practicing these things. So when we have got this short opportunity to get inside and do some changes, we had already rehearsed this several times so we can get in and out and do the job efficiently and quickly. I was at CCFE for approximately 2 years, and then moved across to this company called Lucy Electric. Lucy Electric make medium to high voltage switchgear. Switchgear is probably not something most people at your age would be familiar with, but you've all probably been familiar with a power cut that goes off for maybe 5 seconds and then comes back on again, and you wonder what that was. Now, that would have been a switchgear tripping for various reasons, but then the backup switchgear kicks in and reconnects your power. So we've got various different items here that Lucy Electric manufactured. This one here in the bottom right corner and the one above it, I was involved in the prototype development of these items, so building them in the workshop, checking that their mechanisms operated correctly, and then taking them over to test facilities in Germany and Netherlands, where we would operate these items in front of certification, and they would confirm that they operate safely and within regulations, and give us the green light to start selling them to the European market. That was during the time that I was prototype research and development technician. I then moved across to another department in the business called the industrial engineering department, and we would focus on cost reduction and manufacturing, new product introduction into manufacturing. So this item on the left, we were struggling to sell this item. We was one of the more expensive versions on the market, so we managed to get hold of a competitor's version, one of our biggest competitor. We managed to sneakily buy one of theirs, and we took the whole thing apart and done an analysis on how much we think it costs them to make it, so we can understand how they can sell it for the price they were. The summary on that was we believed that they were making theirs for the similar price than what we were making ours, but they were just selling it for a much cheaper price with much less profits, purely to keep a stronghold on that particular part of the market. So it was quite an interesting insight into how you can see the way businesses operate and how you would look into different costs, and when it's feasible to try and make a high profit, when it's feasible to make not much of a profit at all. The item in the middle, I was started as the development on this before moving across to the second department. And then luckily we decided to build this item for the first time at a new factory in Thailand. So I was involved in transferring all the technical data from the R&D facility in the UK to our manufacturing facility in Thailand. This included having some Thai colleagues visit the UK to introduce them to the build process, and then flying out to Thailand to teach them, their wider team, on how we build it, test our production lines, and do some low-level production to see what feedback we can get from the production facility. And all of those problems that we picked up, we would engineer them out, and then slowly ramp up volume. By the time I left this business, we went from making a team of us flying over there to build 3 in 2 weeks, and when I left, we were making up to 300 a month. So that shows how a business can grow in another part of the world, and how you can develop a product along the way in short quantities and slowly hand it over, and the whole product then gets transferred to production, and they are then fully in charge of all of the modifications and changes. I was happy in this job, and I loved all of the travel. I went to 5 different countries with Lucy Electric, but an opportunity came up that was not my line of work, not my typical line of work, no previous experience at all. But an opportunity came up, and I had something that they wanted, and it was difficult to say no. I went racing. I spent the 2018 season working for Williams F1. This job was known as a garage technician. Not quite a mechanic. The Sky Sports commentators call us all mechanics, but we've all got different jobs. But during the pit stop, we're all known as mechanics, but we all go out there and all do a job. You can see with the arrow here pointing to me, I was the guy with the lollipop. So I would hover this lollipop over the perfect position where we wanted the driver to stop his front wheel, and that was his target, so he can stop in the optimum position for everyone else to do their job in as quickly a time as possible. I think in that season that I was involved, I think our quickest pit stop was 2.1 seconds, or 2.01 seconds, I can't recall, slightly over 2 seconds. And this would include jacking the car up, changing all four wheels, cleaning the rear wing from tarmac and bugs, and making some adjustments to the front wing to increase or decrease the downforce. So the reason how I ended up getting that job was because of my former experience in machine shops. They wanted someone on the team who could make these changes at short notice. And in the whole year that I was working for Williams, I only used these skills once. My main duties were in charge of fuel, in charge of building the garage, in charge of maintaining pit stop tools. But the only time that I used the skills that they recruited me for was one time they modified the front of the car and forgot to modify the tool that connects to the front that picks the car up in the air. So it wasn't until we actually flew out to a different country and realized what had happened, then we wouldn't be able to pick the car up for the whole weekend, that I was called into action and had to spend a few hours using these skills that I actually learned at the company that I'd done my apprenticeship in. So it goes to show that those skills do transfer all the way down the line. So it was an interesting year, something that isn't really doesn't really show in that linear path of my career, but it was very interesting. Any F1 fans here can see me on the bike here. This is cycling around Silverstone when I used to do the scanning of the tarmac for the tyre engineers to figure out how long our tyres will last. In the background here, you'll see 2 guys being interviewed by F1 TV, and that is Lando Norris and George Russell. And this is before they even got into F1. This is when they were racing in F2. So it was just a complete fluke that I managed to snap them before they were really famous. So after a year of working in that job, it was very interesting, but I decided I wanted to come back home. I missed being away from home that much. That was a very excessive amount of travel. So I started looking for work back home, and that brought me back to Tokamak's. So, and this is where I currently work. So back to the present, Tokamak Energy. Now, I won't go into too much detail of what a Tokamak is, but it is a device that we hope to use to create our power to the national grid. So rather than burning coal and gas, which creates lots of carbon emissions, to create the heat, to create the steam, to turn the turbines, we want a different heat source. So creating a plasma out of limitless clean energy would be the optimum solution. So it's very much a research project at the moment. We have created heat. So far, we've created a plasma at a temperature of 100 million degrees Celsius, and that will happen in the click of a fingers. The next stage is to create a plasma that we can hold for longer than a click of a fingers, that we can then transfer the heat across to the back end of the system, which will be creating the steam. I was brought in as a manufacturing and prototype engineer, and that would be working with the design engineers to get all of the parts that they were designing, get them all purchased and manufactured from external suppliers, getting the correct tooling available, the correct fixings, the correct documentation, and kitting all that work up ready. So when the last component came in and the schedule was relevant to start that process, we were able to just transfer all that information to the technicians who would get on installing these particular parts of the build. I've tried to put some arrows here. As you can see, the image on the left, this is what the Tokamak looks like. If I was to stand on the wooden platform here, my head would come to about here, just to give you a sense of scale, and I'm 6 foot. And this is a digitally rendered image of the Tokamak. If you were to chop it in half from top to bottom, right down the middle, this gives you a view of what it is. So you have this center column with these magnets, and then inside here is a vacuum chamber where all the magic happens. So I've sort of tried to make some associations here with features on the actual image to the digital image. I was doing that job for about 3 years, and then as we kept on growing, we needed more and more space, more and more facilities, and I've seen an opportunity to jump into another department, which is what I'm currently doing, and that is a digital design coordinator in the site infrastructure department. So everyone wants space, everyone needs different things, different services, compressed air, various gases for research, electric of different voltages, different ventilation levels. So people put in what they want, that request comes to us, and we start figuring out the best place for this to happen, design for the specification, and once it's all approved, we then pass it on to the installation team to get on with that. The image you can see now is a 2D image of our site. The image I've shown you previously of the Tokamak, this sits here, and this crucible shape here is a 600mm thick concrete wall to capture all of our radiation which it emits. So just to give you a sense of scale of the building, I think this is 200 meters across this edge and about 120 meters across this edge. So we oversee all of this now, and that is my current day-to-day job. How those skills from my apprenticeship got me there, there's no direct path to that, but it shows that you can take those core skills and start zigzagging your way through your career and seeing opportunities of interest and jumping across with some good underpinning engineering knowledge that displays that you can pick things up and show some competency. It enables you to start hopping around and changing your path. So what the decision you make now, today, when you're 16, or when you're whatever age, any decisions you do make, they're not for life. It always does give you just another step, and every now and again you can stop and review and see what you fancy. And as long as you show willing and initiative and you try and apply yourself, I think people will see that. Engineers especially can see whose brain works in a way that they will easily survive in different positions. So yeah, it's just a good example of how I left school, unfortunately with no plan, managed to land on my feet a little bit, and over the years have applied myself, kept on pushing, and I've managed to travel across the world, really. These are all the countries I've worked in. 5 of them countries were visited while working for Lucy Electric. They were the UAE, so Dubai. We had a factory in Dubai, so I went there for a week. We had a factory in India. I went there for a week. We had a factory in South Africa. I went there for a week again. And Thailand, I was in Thailand in 2017. I was in Thailand for nearly 5 months of that year. At one point, I was spending 2 weeks in the UK and 2 weeks in Thailand consistently. And the other countries outside of Lucy Electric were all experienced during my time at Williams F1 racing. So naturally, you'd be hopping around the world. Unfortunately, that was such a busy schedule that you didn't get to see much of the culture at all, as you literally were working from the moment you got off the plane. And the moment the race finished, you'd be packing up and looking to get a flight back home again. So you do get to see the world. You do get to see some things, but you don't get to absorb yourself as much because you don't really have much time off. The country I enjoyed the most was Thailand, due to the amount of weekends I had off there. Give me a good chance to get around and explore their cultures, and I really absorbed myself. And I did make quite a lot of local friends there, which I do miss. The most country that I'd recommend visiting would be Azerbaijan, in particularly Baku, their capital. It is a really interesting place. You can see over the years different parts of the world and different you can see how it's been under different rule and how that rule has influenced their architecture. You can sort of see how it's got a bit of an Arabic feel in some areas, and then some European in another, and then a slightly Soviet one in different parts. So as powers have shifted around the world across the centuries, you can sort of see how there's been an influence left behind. It's a very interesting city, and I do highly recommend anyone who looks for a long weekend away to go to Baku in Azerbaijan. I bet you don't know many people who've been there. So yeah, that concludes all I've got to say today. Thanks for listening to me ramble on.
Thank you, Paul. That was really, really interesting. We've just got time for a very quick Q&A, because I know some of our audience have got to go to their lessons. So the first question coming in is, are there apprenticeships at Tokamak?
We've just taken on our first apprentice, and that was an apprentice working in the health physics department. So he's working in the area that looks after all of our radiation detection to keep us all safe. And there is now, since my colleague kicked off the STEM initiative 6 months ago, there has now been a massive focus on how we can start getting apprentices in different fields, so electrical, mechanical, and then in the sides of less hands-on roles as well. So there is scope for apprenticeships, and I hope that we could get some on board by the time we get to, I think September is usually the starting point for any apprenticeship. So as it stands, we've got one, and that was in a non-hands-on role. I think they've got to get some health and safety in order to enable people to come in at a younger age and be in those sort of environments. So yes, there is, and there'll be more coming soon.
Brilliant. Okay. So I've got another. So what's your favourite part of the day?
My favourite part of the day? I think lunch is an obvious one. My favourite part of the day? I like meetings. People don't like meetings, but I do like meetings because I like talking to people. So anywhere where you get a good interaction with people and a good update on where the projects are, and then you always come out of meetings with a new set of tasks and a new little bit of focus. So yeah, any time of the day that's got a meeting, I look forward to those.
Fantastic. And did you find it hard studying and working at the same time?
No, the only difficulty I had was during my once I started college. I'd already been doing working on these machines previously for maybe the 4 or 5 months prior on a full-time basis. So by the time I'd started college, the components that they were asking us to make on their machines were like 100 times easier than the components I was actually making for my employer. So it was actually the other way around, where I found it stupidly easy. And and the only work I really had to learn was the cross-referencing to make sure that the stuff I was doing was referenced to the criteria to get you through the qualification. But no, it wasn't difficult at all. The workload was totally separate from the college. You know, I was only ever scheduled to be given 3 days worth of work per week. So it wasn't like I had to get back in and catch up on a day's worth of work. It wasn't like that at all. So no, I didn't have any problems. I think the only problem I did have obviously was being motivated to go in and make things that were very, very boring in comparison to the stuff I was doing back at work.
Okay, so do you feel you missed out on the university experience?
No, I never had a desire. Like I said in my slides, I didn't have a plan. You know, the plan was to be a police officer. If I'd known I couldn't be one till I was 21, then maybe I would have looked at opportunities to go on study to get some relevant qualifications. So when I do join the police force, I would have had some good qualifications to get you higher up those promotion levels. You know, I think as you get to, it's a bit like the army. The more qualifications you have, the easier it is to climb up those ladders. But I had no plan at all, really. So I've had lots of friends who've gone to uni. Obviously, by the time I was 18, 19, and my friends shooting off to university, I had lots of opportunities to go and visit them in different cities and enjoy the associated nightlife. And but no, I think I was done with studying, really. Like I said, I didn't enjoy school. And the moment I was given an opportunity to get my hands on something, I started enjoying getting up in the morning and going somewhere. So no, I've got no regrets about not going to university at all. To be honest, there's still opportunity for me to go to university now. If I wanted to further develop my qualifications, if I thought that they would benefit me, I could seek to take some. There's lots of different variations of how you can study as a mature student, but currently, as it stands, I can't see anything that's obviously worth the effort to further develop my career. So no regrets, and I've got no plans to do anything at this stage either.
Thanks, Paul. I've just got time for one more quick question. Let me see. Did you get to meet lots of other apprentices?
At college, yes. The whole of my class was made of apprentices. There was 5 guys who came from the BMW Mini factory. I don't know if you know, but the Mini you see, the commonly driven Mini, is made in Oxford. So all of their guys got sent to the same college as me. And there was people from various different industries, some small businesses, for some international businesses. So I met lots of apprentices at college mainly, and it wasn't until the back end of my apprenticeship at Tokamak Engineering they decided to get another apprentice. So as I was finishing mine, a new one started. But my whole friendship and social circle, I was the only apprentice there, really. People had either stayed on studying and gone to university, or weren't doing any apprenticeship at all. We're just working in jobs that didn't require it. So there's nobody in my immediate circle that was on the same journey as me.
Okay, thanks so much for that, Paul. That was really interesting talk there, and thank you for all our audience for watching.
Cheers, thank you.